Hey everyone, Jenna here. I'm sharing this video as a brief teaching about Jesus archetypes and Christ consciousness and also the time of Jesus. And this is a video where you're going to see two versions of me. One where I'm painting and working on a womb chakra painting. And this is the part of the video where I'm processing my thoughts and feelings about a particular public figure and a particular archetype. And so in this video, we're talking about Sam Garrett. We're going to be talking about his archetype. We're going to be talking about his music. We're going to be talking about the ways I've enjoyed his music and worked with it and utilized it. And I'm going to be talking about a little brief amount of feedback that I have for him. And this is in service to our collective healing, in service to our collective clarity around archetypes. And then at the end of the painting video, I come back on the screen and I share more about Sam's past incarnation during the time of Jesus or prior to the time of Jesus. And this is a bold thing to share, but if you stick with me at the end of this video, I think it might make sense and I think it might be helpful. And it was a beautiful experience for me to see his true archetype and to see his soul a little more. And so, Sam, if you find this video and you watch it, stick with me till the end so that you can have the big reveal about one of your incarnations in the past. And I typically don't do a lot of sharing of other people's karmas or incarnations. If I have seen them, I see it a lot. I see a lot now. And and so I'm always cautious about how that might be shared and whether it's appropriate to share publicly because that's very personal. And Sam has been a public figure, and Sam has shared about Jesus and about Jesus's teachings and about ancient wisdom, and has positioned himself in a way where he's talked about being a modern day Jesus. And so this is for Sam's healing. This is for Sam's clarity. This is for uh, a teaching for all of us, but also for Sam and for his journey of finding his true self, which is a beautiful self, a beautiful soul, a powerful soul, an important soul. And and so I'm grateful to share this. And so as you go through this, know that there's two parts to this video after this intro. So stick with me till the end for the grand reveal related to karmas from the time of Jesus. Hey everyone, Jenna here. I'm doing some temple work today. I'm doing some healing work with the womb chakra. This is one of the womb chakra paintings that I've been working on. This one I've been working on since early 2025. And so this has been a progressive journey of utilizing this yantra in painting format to support my healing, to support collective healing, to see through collective illusions. And I want to speak about some collective illusions and specifically about the path of Jesus and specifically about the path of Christ consciousness and womb technology that allows us, when the womb is clear, to see through illusions and allows us to uh, understand our darkness and understand the parts of ourselves that still need illumination. And so I've been on a big journey of doing that for myself and illuminating those parts of myself that have been hidden in the darkness or that have been mired in illusion. And a lot of my work has resulted in collective liberation processes, doing yogic shamanic work for the purpose of helping others see through illusions on this planet, in this reality, etc. Better understanding the time of Jesus, better understanding even from like a galactic standpoint, the technologies, the spiritual technologies used by Jesus, some of his followers, and the Holy Family, and other avatars of light, masters of light, beings of light throughout time. Jesus is not the only one, of course, but a lot of my study has involved going to India, compiling, integrating a lot of different wisdom from different cultures around the world, but also specifically working with some advanced technologies, mantra systems from India, et cetera. And so that's given me some real lived experience of what it's like to advance human consciousness in a way where we can see through illusions and we can see consciousness patterns and we can see our karmic patterns, even past life patterns that are present for us that need healing. And ultimately, we see these things because there's some healing that wants to happen. And that's the light of source, allowing for illumination, allowing for revelation, allowing for truth to come to the surface. And at the same time, in this world, we've suffered from a lot of mental distortion and a lot of illusions. And we've also had illusions related to historical figures of power. We've had illusions related to what it's like to be a person of power in this world, or go through high level initiatory processes to gain a certain type of divine power that brings healing, that brings clarity, that brings revelation, that brings a higher order of truth into the collective consciousness, which is very much what Jesus was about. And there's a lot of people following in his footsteps today. And I want to talk specifically about one person who's a public figure who's put themselves out there. And so I'm not talking about anything that's like overly personal or private or anything. But I think this is an interesting case study and example in how illusions form for us, and also how we sometimes take on false roles. We take on roles that are not really like our soul's truest essence because we're mimicking. We're like mimicking a role that came before us, that we've seen in someone else, that a teacher or guru or public figure or someone imposed on us or told us we needed to be like. And the way Christ consciousness shows up in us can look different person to person, because Christ consciousness is just the pure light of source coming through us, the pure love and creativity of source coming through us. And one thing I've noticed on my journey, both in my studies in India and engaging some of the New Age community and different spiritual communities, is that there has been a lot of illusion around different beings of power. There's been illusion around where their power comes from. There's been illusion around who they are specifically. There's been illusion around how that power is accessed and embodied, or how it is even gained by a being of power. There's been illusions about what it would look like when these beings come back to Earth. There's been illusions that form in people's minds related to having an experience of thinking they were a being of power when they were not, or when their soul was just finding a resonance with a being of power. We've oftentimes confused personal experience for archetypal experience. And as humans, our consciousness can access both our own soul's personal experiences from the past, but also archetypal consciousness. So technically, the consciousness of any powerful being, avatar, master that has walked before us in this world, that consciousness is available to us as a bar that we can reach, right? So like they've set a bar for the type of consciousness that's available to humans. Now all humans can rise to that level. All humans can start to access and embody that state of consciousness. So that's partially what these beings are doing when they come to Earth. It's partially about providing that access in the Earth matrix for souls who are on a path of awakening and on a path of advancement to reach that point of embodying more of source light, more of source intelligence, more of source truth, etc. And truth is an interesting thing because we all have our own personal truths of what feels true to us. We have collective truths of what feels true to us collectively. Sometimes our agreed upon truths are actually negative illusions, and there's more truth to find under the surface. Again, sometimes we wear a role or a mask, and that might be somewhat true for us for a while, but it's not the deeper truth of our soul beneath the surface. And so I want to point to a particular individual who I have been aware of and followed for a while, and I've admired this person's work. So this is not a judgment. This is not saying that this person's work is irrelevant or something that people shouldn't follow or enjoy or engage with, because I've followed it and enjoyed it and engaged with it, and I have a concern. And so I want to share that concern because this is a person who I have shared on this channel in a brief way and on my Instagram page through their music. So as part of my journey to India, I started working with a variety of different mantra systems and have used that off and on throughout my work, throughout my evolution. And so sometimes I like listening to mantra music. Not all of it resonates with me. And specifically, there's certain aspects of mantra practice that if we're not fully conscious to who we're praying to, why we're praying to that being or deity, etc., we're really just staying in a fractured place. Because a lot of the deities that are present in Indian cosmology are ancient beings of power, ancient ETs who've interacted with Earth in ancient times. They all have their own archetypal consciousness. They all, in some ways, have come to represent different aspects of cosmic mechanics and universal consciousness that's working through all of us. And humans have had a confusion about these beings of power versus our source. And so in a lot of mantra music, you might find prayers to Shiva, Lakshmi, Ganesh. Again, sometimes I use those, but I'm using that from the standpoint of embodying a particular archetypal aspect of source in myself. So embodying more beauty, more abundance, more expansion, more wealth, more feminine flow and creativity. That might be the Lakshmi essence that I'm wanting to embody more of. So I'm not praying to an external being, but sometimes in mantra culture, yogic culture, that's kind of what ends up happening. And also sometimes with some of these mantras, we're starting to we're starting to call on different gurus from the past. Again, nothing wrong with that in terms of calling in allies of light, calling in allied ancestors, family of light to support us. And some of the music I enjoy just because of the fun vibe, and so while I'm not praying to Ganesha, because Ganesha was a hybridized elephant human that happened back in our Atlantis times, I'm praying to receive the divine love of source that is the destroyer of obstacles that Ganesha has now come to represent in human consciousness. So it's we have to do all this work to expand and understand how source is being represented in our cosmology and mythology through all these different mantras. So I'm just saying that as like a preface to what I'm about to say related to the mantra music. So some of this mantra music, uh, I kind of don't listen to anymore because of that. But some of it I do, just with a particular intention. And so I found Sam Garrett's music last year, early in the year, and used it in some of my painting practice and generally just, vibed with it and felt like it was fun to listen to and helped kind of connect my work, from India to my painting practice. And it just gave me, kind of a new, more fun, upbeat set of music to listen to. And I think he's produced, great music in many ways. And something interesting happened recently that caught my eye. And I'm just speaking to this for our collective healing. I'm speaking to this because of collective illusions. And so that we can all go forward in a healthier way together, so that we can all also truly, deeply honor what Jesus went through to support this world. Because I think sometimes, when a figure is so far back in history, it becomes easy, uh, even when we are honoring them from like a religious, spiritual standpoint for healing, it can also become easy to kind of detach and not fully honor the depth of experience that occurred for that being. And this is where we also get a lot of these illusions that play out for people. So Sam recently in his Instagram posts started sharing how he's moving beyond his singer guru identity, which is great. He's like finding himself. He's in an exploration process of stripping back some of these masks and roles that he's been wearing. And again, having teachers and performers and people sharing wisdom is important. Like we need that. And also at the same time, it's so easy to put on a mask that we've been given without finding our true self. And so Sam's been doing a lot of singing around the world and singing spiritual music and teaching through spiritual music and that sort of thing. And in one of his recent posts, he's describing this shift that's happening for him, where he's kind of throwing out the guru role and describing it as, something that he kind of adopted and isn't feeling totally true for him anymore. He's finding his true self, etc. And so then there's a lot of commentary on that, of course, from people. Then he does a follow-up post saying a lot of people got mad at some of his approach to kind of throwing out this previous persona that he's had, which has been kind of a Jesus persona he's been wearing. And so I've kind of recognized that in him. Like he's sharing certain things that are of the nature of what Jesus would share, but maybe from a different lived experience. So he's sharing teaching. He's a teacher, but he may not be of the power, ability, consciousness of Jesus, right? So in his follow-up post, he talks about having offended people, and he's saying like he had no intention of offending people, etc. Like he's still playing his music and he loves his music and wants to continue that, but he's just evolving, etc. Blah blah blah. He's kind of realized a lot of what he thought to be true maybe wasn't true anymore. So all of a sudden I'm kind of seeing this and I'm kind of like looking at it a little more, and I'm noticing one comment in particular kind of early on in one of the recent posts, and I'm going to read it here. And it looks like it's from an Indian man. It says, "Sam, your music is splendid, but even out of jest, don't write you're a modern day Jesus. You weren't crucified to spread unconditional love on this realm." And when I saw that, I thought, huh. And I went back to Sam's profile, and he does have in his profile basically a modern day Jesus. And I thought, that's interesting. because we can all seek to embody Christ consciousness. And I would implore the collective and those who are on a spiritual path of seeking to deeply examine those parts of themselves that want to identify with being the reincarnation of Jesus, because you are likely not. So Sam replies with LOL, laugh emoji. Then the man who commented says, New Age, hippie love and light got everyone so twisted that one can't even fathom the sacrifice of Christ. Prabal Punjabi, well said. Well said. I just got chills. Yeah. And then someone else replies to him saying, how do you know? Winky face and laughing emoji. So, the fact that Sam replied with an LOL and laughing emoji and not something like more introspective or thoughtful, I think is showing me everything I need to know about, where Sam's consciousness sits. And I'm not saying that levity and like laughter is not part of like Christ consciousness. I laugh a lot. And when you do see through certain illusions and bust through certain human illusions and human uh, experience of separation from source, there is a real mechanism in the system that allows for laughter and levity and this type of what I call cosmic humor, or like the cosmic giggles, I call them. So it's like when you're seeing through the illusions so much, sometimes it is uh, a natural response to laugh. And at the same time, I would expect someone who's presenting themselves as being a modern day Jesus to also be able to uh, share with more depth on that specific topic. And I know Sam has like shared a lot throughout his time around his spiritual exploration, his path of embodying love, etc. However, however, for someone who is serious about teaching the path of Jesus or the path of unconditional love or the path of what it takes to truly embody unconditional love, I I'm just kind of struggling with this. I'm kind of struggling with how he's presented himself. I'm kind of struggling with this sort of like flippant uh, response, and a lot of people are appreciating him, for kind of throwing away the old mask and role and stepping outside of that box to just like find his own self. And I appreciate that too, because I don't think he should be mimicking Jesus in the way that he was, or his Indian guru trope, which is not a fully integrated, advanced consciousness. And so I just want to name that, I think just from the brief time I've tapped into this person's contributions to the world and their consciousness, there's been a lot I've appreciated, and I don't appreciate this. And I think that needs to be said. And I'm saying it out loud. This is to you, Sam. I'm saying I don't appreciate the flippant response there. I think that's unhealthy, quite frankly, in a public context, like whatever sort of, reaction experience we have inside of ourselves in private, whatever, it's like that's our own experience to be moving through. And as a public figure, as someone who has positioned themselves as a type of guru and teacher and someone who has mimicked Jesus, I would expect more from you. And so anyway, I bless Sam's path of finding his true self. I think that's awesome. I think that is exactly the path he needs to be on now. I think he needs to be on a path of understanding why there's been this type of mimicry happening with him, and why there's been this sort of mask happening with him, and why he wasn't able to provide a more thoughtful, like caring reflection on Jesus's sacrifices. And, I'm a person who doesn't know Sam's personal life. I don't know what sort of fire he's walked through. I don't know what sort of initiations he's been through, but I can just say from my own experience of very, very intense, powerful spiritual initiation that has been difficult in life-threatening ways at times. I think at times we've really, in spiritual communities especially, we've really not wanted to like look at the level of suffering that certain beings of power have endured to be able to balance opposites, to be able to hold the entirety of human consciousness in their system. And so that's a path of learning I've been on in this lifetime. And so I'm now at a point in my consciousness where I can see these things in others. I can see these things in myself, from the past, or times where, uh, I started to adopt a role that wasn't quite, or a mask that wasn't quite me, or wasn't my fully integrated self. And we're all on that journey. So again, this is saying like everyone's entitled to that journey. Everyone's on that journey. And if you're a public figure with a big following and you've been responsible for people's spiritual evolution through that, and you've assumed some responsibility for that, you also have a responsibility to show up in a more thoughtful, caring way. And I think what Punjabi shared about, some of the New Age light and love movement, uh, kind of what he's implying there is like a spiritual bypassing sort of movement. And that's true. That's what I've encountered in some ways in the spiritual New Age community. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of unwillingness to look at our deeper shadow and deeper parts that have been unhealed or have been completely mired in illusion in this world. Because there's a lot of illusion that we haven't wanted to look at, that we haven't wanted to face, that we haven't wanted to excavate within ourselves. And so I'm seeing, that there's obviously, still a lot Sam's excavating, and that's okay. That's awesome. Like we all should be excavating ourselves and like finding our truest self. And he should take the modern day Jesus off his Instagram, especially if he's not going to actually show up like Jesus and demonstrate a more loving, thoughtful, explanatory approach. Um, and especially when confronted with a comment like that tells me there's something deeply unintegrated in him. So that's what I had to say about this as another short Jesus and Christ consciousness teaching. I hope this was helpful. I share this with the intention of offering this wisdom for our collective healing, for our ability to just discern these parts of ourselves that have been confused, have taken on masks or roles that aren't quite ours, to be willing to do that deeper excavation work to find our true self so that we're not just parroting uh, past gurus, so that we can find our true inner guru. And so I bless that for Sam's journey, and I bless that for all of us. And I felt like this was an important thing to speak on. Again, not to bring judgment to Sam specifically, maybe a little, but to speak on this for the purpose of avoiding these types of negative, confusing, ego-driven ways we hold ourselves and our roles. And so I'm just concerned, like when I see that there's been a large group of people following someone who's been responsible for the evolution of souls, who's had some influence, like strong influence over people. It's like we have to take that seriously. We have to take seriously like how we're influencing others and what sort of demonstration we're providing. And so I don't like that demonstration. I don't like that demonstration. I don't think that's a very Christ consciousness demonstration. Laughter and levity is totally Christ consciousness, but within the right context. So that's what I have to say. And blessings to all on our path of embodying our truest selves and the light that is meant to flow through us in authentic, uh, beautiful, loving ways. Okay, we're not done. I have one more thing to share that I think might be helpful for our collective integration. Since I was speaking on archetypes related to Sam and related to the mimicry of Jesus, I want to also speak to Sam's archetype. And I want to speak to the reason that many spiritual beings, we're all spiritual beings, but some who have found themselves on more of a robust path of integrating spiritual wisdom and knowledge in this life, why some of those beings have really followed in Jesus's footsteps or have done a type of mimicry that feels like what they're supposed to be doing. And sometimes that's because they were disciples. Sometimes that's because they walked with Jesus. They knew Jesus. They were uh, part of that time. And so there are a number of people, like from my higher perspective, from my galactic perspective, that I've seen in this world that I've just immediately known, like, I think you were a disciple with Jesus. I think this person had some important role to play back then, and they knew Jesus, and they knew how important it was to carry forth the teachings and the attempted embodiment of Christ light. And in this world, because of all the illusions, we've sometimes just gotten confused on what that looks like, and so we feel like we have to embody this, certain sort of role mask that we wear, a persona that we wear or whatever. And so I was thinking about this because Sam in his music, in one of his songs, talks about Mooji Baba. And Mooji was Michael. Crying because it's true. I saw that last year. And I can see this stuff because I was there too at times. I've been incarnating throughout time in various ways to be part of this larger ascension process on Earth. And so Sam and his music calls out some different people who have been like real disciples of Jesus, like the way Mooji shows up. He's carrying forth the light, he's he's meant to like be a testament of that in this lifetime, a demonstration of that in this lifetime. And I was just thinking about Sam, and I was thinking, God, was Sam like where does Sam fit in this? Like how does Sam's persona and archetype, how does that fit the Jesus time? Because again, there's nothing inherently wrong about like how he has portrayed himself. It's beautiful. He's done an awesome job of being a teacher of light and of wisdom. And at the same time, there's been a little bit of that confusion there, I can tell at times. So, Sam, this might be for you more than anyone else. I'm just going to read here from something that came up from Google as I started exploring this. Samuel was a pivotal Old Testament prophet and priest. While he's not a disciple of Jesus in the New Testament sense, Christian tradition and theology view Samuel as a vital type or aspect of Christ, a foreshadowing of Jesus's offices as prophet, priest, and king. Both had miraculous births linked to prayer and grew in stature and favor with God and man. Samuel uniquely held the offices of prophet, priest, and judge in Israel, prefiguring the ultimate roles of Jesus. Samuel spoke the word of the Lord to his generation, while Jesus became the living word. So I'm crying right now because my system is registering some aspect of truth here for Sam, and so I want to add this to the video for his sake, for his integration, if that feels true to him, because I don't want what I previously said to also make it seem like he's lost or that he does not speak the word in beautiful ways, because he does. And he's lived it in beautiful ways. And I can see that. And sometimes when we've had a historical link to a powerful being like Jesus, until we can get clear on what our karma or connection is and place our role in relation to that other person, we then have some sort of confusion that develops. So, Sam, you're not Jesus. You're Sam. So, thank you for what you've brought to this world. And thank you for letting me see your soul and share this, because you are an important prophet. You're not a false prophet like some. You're an important one, and I've admired you. What I said previously is true too. I'm glad you're finding yourself. It's important to find yourself. It's important to know why we embody the roles we've embodied. You've done good work, Sam. Now just go be Sam now. Blessings on your path, brother.